Hello everyone, Rhonda here. Welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to take you on another little rose painting tutorial. So a while back, about 3 months ago, I painted this yellow rose here and I did a tutorial on it. And I just want to thank everybody for all the views that I've gotten on that. It's actually been my most viewed video. So I thought that it was about time to follow that up with a different color of rose and show you guys how to do that. So I will post a link up here to this rose painting tutorial for you, and then I'll also have a link at the end of this video. And I'm going to today paint for you a pink rose, and we might throw a few blossoms in there because I've been working on blossoms a little bit lately. So let's go on down to my table and I will show you how that's done. All right, so first of all, I'm going to show you what I'm going to be using, and I apologize for any background noise today. We've been going through a heat wave, so the air conditioner is on. Hopefully that won't make too much noise. So here I have, again, an 8x10 board. This is just 1/8 inch thick MDF. I'll have links to all the products in the description. I like to paint on these boards because the brush really moves smoothly across them for the roses. I just base coated it with just a gray that I make mixed out of just a bunch of old colors. For my colors, once again, I am using my Heritage Multimedia paints. You can get them from the Jansen Art Store, and these are my go-to paint for acrylics. I love these paints. So what I have here is Hansa Yellow. This is a Daria-Lide yellow. Now I don't know if I'm going to actually use the Daria-Lide for this painting, but I put it out because I'm going to be working on a wildlife painting after this, and I needed some for that. This is yellow oxide, naphthol red light, pine green, burnt sienna, phthalo blue, red violet, and white. For brushes, I'm going to be using my 3/4 inch Fusion flat. Again, these Fusion brushes can be purchased through Jansen Art Store online. They are my favorite brushes for this as well. Very soft. They're actually a watercolor style brush. I use them for my watercolors as well. So, but I really like them for painting roses. So this is the 3/4 inch flat, and then the bulk of the painting I'm going to do, I decided, with my number 8 flat Fusion. And then I have some water, and I have my little container of extender medium. This little container that I have of extender medium that I can use, and that extender medium again is it's for the Heritage Multimedia paints. It's the Heritage Multimedia extender medium, and it works perfectly with these paints because it's designed for them, and it will extend the drying time and thin the paint out a little, that sort of thing. So I will get to work on this painting and show it to you. All right, so let's get started. So I've decided today, because I'm going to be painting a pink rose for you with a few blossoms, what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of keep my background a little bit more light and airy. So I was thinking what might be fun for a background would be to put, and now this is one of just the fun creative parts of painting, is to just put a nice kind of bright yellow background, and then maybe I'll put some streaks of some other colors in it and stuff as well. So I thought I'd start with that. I'm going to take a little bit of my hansa and some white here, make a nice light yellow. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to kind of throw that across my background a little bit. I'm not being too picky about where I put it or that kind of thing. I just want to have a lot of movement in the background. I often like to kind of paint it a bit like an X, like this, or a cross, that sort of thing. Now I think I'm going to actually add a little bit of burnt sienna to that and make a bit of a brown as well to put on here. I kind of like adding that in, especially down on this side, because I think I'm going to have my light coming in from this direction. So I'm going to make this side a little bit darker, and I'm going to actually also make this side a little bit cooler. This is all just me playing with the paint, and I don't really have a plan. See, I don't want it to be too pink though, because I'm going to be doing pink roses. So I'm going to go back to a bit more brown here. Why don't we just take a nice streak of burnt sienna right through there? That'll look pretty. Some streaks of that really dark burnt sienna. That'll look quite pretty. Now I want to go back to some more yellow here in the center. And all of these colors will just kind of play off each other. Just messing around with color. Put some oranges in there, and now I want to get some more really light yellow here to have my light coming in. That's half the fun of the painting, is just coming up with these cool backgrounds, fun backgrounds for it. Let's redo that streak because I liked that. Through the center there. Looks kind of cool. Yeah, what do you think? I think that makes a cool background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just, see, this is kind of a nice darker color. I'm going to kind of just mix some of this in there together to kind of make this color. And I'm going to use that to set up where my flowers are going to go. So I'm thinking, in this case, I'm going to have my light coming in from this direction. I'd like to have kind of like a nice, my big queen rose, just like right, I'm thinking like in here. So I'm going to have it, but I think I'm going to have it actually turning up this way. It's hard to see on that background, but I'm going to have it turning up this way. So I'm going to show you right away here what direction I want to have it turn. I'm going to take some of my red violet here. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a bit of a center. And that center is what's going to make that rose really have its shape. So just taking some of the red violet into the center, and then also down here where the shadow side of the rose is going to be. So that's going to be my bowl shadow. And I'll go back and I'll redo that after with a smaller brush, but I just kind of wanted to get that in there. So I'm going to have this nice big rose in the center. And then I'm actually going to switch to my smaller brush. I decided what might look nice on that background, because I have a lot of that orangey color in there, would be to have some blue and violet type blossoms behind it, because it's quite a, the background right now is quite warm because of all the yellows that I put into it. So I think I'm going to do a pink rose with some really nice violet flowers. So I'm going to actually, just so that you guys also know, I have my paper towel here that I always have with me. So I'm going to take some violet. I think I'm going to take some blue. That's that phthalo blue. Add a little bit of white to that. Make this kind of a nice dark tone there. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of put some, I'm just going to kind of sketch them in here. So some little blossoms. That's what I'm trying to say. It's been a long, hot day. So I think I'll put one there. I'll maybe put, I put one here, but I'm going to have it turning up like that. Now, this is something interesting that I've been learning through the lessons that I've been taking, and I'll actually I'll link to one of the lessons from my mentor on how to turn blossoms, because it was a really good lesson, taught me a lot. I'll show you here one of the paintings that I did recently. This is one that I just did recently here, where I was actually practicing turning my blossoms. So I have some straight on and some turned right around like that. So I've been practicing that. So when you want to turn a blossom, what you do, see if I wanted to have one up here, the more, when you're looking at it straight on, it's a circle. The more you want it to turn, the more you make it into an oval. So if I'm going to put a couple of blossoms coming up here, I kind of wanted to separate them from the rose and have them come up here. I would start with my outer wings of the blossom there, and then I want to keep the shape of the blossom more oval. So that's kind of what I was going to do there. I'll maybe have one kind of coming down like this as well, up there. And I just wanted to have a couple up there because I thought that would look cute. And then we'll put one in here behind the rose, and maybe another, maybe we'll do a couple down here. Have one kind of behind the other there. That'll look different when I actually get it painted. And we'll put one kind of peeking out from behind the rose there. And let's do another one, a straight on one down there. And we don't want to fill it up too much, so I kind of thought that that would, you want your painting to, you want the focus to be on your queen, which is the rose, and then you want to have your other blossoms and leaves and things supporting it. So you don't want them to take over the whole painting. That's one thing that I used to do when I first started, was I would have so many blossoms it almost looked like an explosion coming out of the painting. So what I'm trying to do here is limit that a little bit so that I have a little bit more room around the painting. I'm going to try and keep some of these areas without too much stuff in them, and that will help. So I'm going to clean off my brush here. And this gives it an opportunity to let the paint tack up a little bit, because one of the things that I find is I tend to put my backgrounds on quite thick, so then it takes a little while for the for things to kind of tack up so that I can actually paint nicely on them. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to move some of this paint off of the palette here so that I actually have some room. I'll keep some of it, but for toning things, but I want to have a bit more room there on my palette. Okay, so if I'm going to do a pink rose, now my light's coming in from this side, so I want my lights to be hitting over here. This is going to be my cool side down here. So I want to use a warm red to make my pink. So that would be my naphthol red light. You can make the pinks with the violet as well, but then they're not going to be a warm pink. And I want that side of my rose to be warm. And the more white you add to it, the more pink it becomes. And so I'm going to just go ahead, and I've got lots of paint on my brush. It's a little more than I want, but I got lots of paint on my brush, and I'm going to strike a petal right across the front. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to kind of bring it down into the flower a little bit. Now I forgot that one thing I was going to do as well was I was going to take some more of this red violet, and I'm just going to deepen that center, because the deeper you make the center, the deeper your rose is going to look. And as you get out further, you reduce the size of your, or you increase the size of your strokes. So your smallest strokes, because your smallest petals are going to be inside the rose, and then as you go out further, you're going to end up with larger petals. So your largest petals of your rose are going to be on the outside where they're the oldest. Your new fresh petals coming out of your rose, if you've seen a rose in real life, will always be in the center. So you want your smaller petals at the center. So now I'm actually going to lighten that up a bit here. I don't always mix it all the way in because it adds more interest if it's a little bit more mottled. So we're going to draw that across the front again there. And I'm going to bring that down towards the bowl. Then let's go ahead and put one over here. I'm kind of adding a few little petals back in here just to kind of break that up a little bit. I'm going to take in some of this darker color now, and I'm going to bring in some outer petals. So I want to take my brush and bring it in towards the bowl, and in towards the bowl, like that. And then I'm going to take the bowl and I'm going to push it out to incorporate that petal into the painting. So I have another one up here that's going to come in like that, and I'm going to push that to keep it together there. Same thing here, we're going to bring it in like this, and then I'm going to, and I will add more definition to these petals as I go. Now as I'm moving around to this side, I'm getting to the cooler side, so I'm going to want to take some of the violet and add it in there to keep this side of the rose cooler. And I'm actually going to kind of just have it disappear over here and fade off, and that's your edges of the rose. So if you want the rose to come forward, so like I want this area here where it's warmer to come forward, so I'm going to make more definition, more detail on that area. This area I'm going to lose my edges. So these are found edges over here where you can actually see the edge of the petal. These are lost edges. It just kind of disappears into the background, and that's the way I want that. So I'm going to kind of close this rose off a little bit here as well. Now if I think that I've got too big of a transition there, I can take a half tone, which is halfway in between those two, and I can kind of transition that with a half tone. I always want to make sure that I'm keeping my rose bowl there, because that bowl is what's going to define the shape of your rose. And so I'm going to mix up some more of this pink here. Now I kind of want to use a bit of a darker pink for some of these outer petals here, so I'm going to keep that a little bit darker and kind of redo those right there. And I actually kind of like that color, so I'm going to throw some of that up in here as well, and even back here. When you find a tone you like, it's sometimes nice to continue using it. I'm going to bring this guy across again. I use my fingers to move the paint. One of the reasons why I can use my fingers to move the paint in this case, you got to be careful and know your paints. These are the Heritage acrylics, and they are non-toxic, so I can be comfortable using my fingers in the paints. There's no cadmium pigments, that kind of thing that could cause you issues. So that's one of the reasons I recommend the Heritage paints as well, because I know that I'm not going to be risking my health at all by touching the paints, and I like to use my fingers when I paint. So now I'm going to add in another petal across the front here. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter so that it stands off from that one back there. And I'm going to put in another one. Let's see. I think I'm going to actually go like this here. So this is one of the other things that I like to do. So I'll take my paint and then I will tip into my white, or sometimes I'll tip into like a lighter pink, and I'm going to make a petal come across here, but I'm going to draw it with the edge of the paintbrush, and that with that white, and that is called the petal edging technique, and that allows me to define the edge of that petal and make it pop forward. So because I want this petal to pop forward off of those back ones, otherwise it just looks like a big blob. So I'm going to do that again here. Take a little bit of an edge of a petal, and I'm going to bring it right through here and then bring that into my bowl. And you'll see my biggest petals are out here, and then I'm getting smaller as I go in. And why don't we do that here, right along here as well. We'll put a nice little petal right there, nice light one. And as I go, I just keep adding more petals, and as I go I'll get steadily lighter as well. You don't want to go up to the brightest lights. So far where I've been at with this color here, it's, you know, probably around like a 5 or a 6 on my scale. Here when I take this one, I'm going up to about probably a 7 or an 8 even, but I'm not up at that white, because that white is what's going to wash your rose right out. So I want to actually make this petal here a little lighter, because that's the front of my queen where the light's hitting. Put a lighter petal in here, just incorporate it in. Now what I might want to do as well is just add a little bit of this light, because my light's coming from this side. I'm going to just add a little bit of this light to these outer petals, and then I'm just going to incorporate that in. just in this spot here in particular where I want it to kind of see that light. You don't want to mess with it too much because you'll lose the interest of your painting, but you want to make sure that it's obvious where your light is. So I'm going to take that petal edge and I'm just going to redefine this edge of this petal here and bring that in. Now I feel like I'm losing my shadow a little bit in there, so I'm going to take a little bit of shadow. I'm just going to add that back in to make sure that I have that shadow, because that's a very important area of the painting. So now I'm going to take even more white and add that to this here, but I want to make sure that I have some of that warm red in it. And I'm going to actually tip into the white here. I'm going to draw a petal right across here. Bring that down, and then bring my shadow up into that petal. See, doesn't that look pretty? I really like that so far. Now, I do find that it's kind of a little bit hidden in this background, but I'm not going to mess with that too much until I put on some of my greenery, because I think that the greenery around it, depending on what color I make it, if I make it kind of a nice light yellow green, it's going to cause the rose to really stand out a lot more. So right now I'm going to actually go and I'm going to do some of these blue blossoms. So I'm going to take some of my blue and add a little bit of purple to it, just to keep it a little cooler. But I want to lighten it up quite a bit. So it's kind of almost like a bit of more of a violet color. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to kind of go over these again and define my blossoms a little bit more. I'm trying to keep the blossoms quite casual. See, now this one here I'm going to have some light on that side, but I'm going to keep the other side a little darker. Same thing here, I'm going to lighten up this side, but I'm going to keep that other side a bit darker. This one here I'm just going to kind of let it fade off. These ones here I'm going to put a little bit into, but I'm going to keep them a little bit more casual over here and let them kind of disappear. Now I want to brighten that up quite a bit. Especially for this guy. So I'm going to kind of define those a little bit more, especially where the light will be hitting them. This guy down here, it'll be more right in that area. And this guy here, it'll be kind of on this side. Now, one thing I can do to make sure that this matches nice is I can actually put a touch of this blue just down into my rose, especially on the cool side here. And that just adds harmony to the painting. It kind of looks like a bit of a reflection. And I kind of like doing that to add some harmony to the painting. So we're going to lighten up that side. We'll go a little bit lighter on that one. Maybe a little bit on there. Now I'm going to take, and I'm going to give these flowers here, I'm just going to switch around my paper towel there. I'm going to give them a nice center. Now what I want to do is I'm actually going to take a bit of this purple and blue, make a deep purple. I'm going to start with that and just go down into my center there with some deep purple. And give it a bit of a deep purple center. Like I say, these ones here will have less detail in them because they're over on the cool side, and I'm trying to keep the detail where my light is. So I'm going to put that in there, and then I'm going to come in sorry, there's flies around here. Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to tip into some of my yellow oxide here on the one side of my brush and some of my hansa on the other side. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to tap it with this yellow oxide through there. And then I'm going to turn it around and use some of the hansa on the side where the light would really be hitting it. And the more I give this texture, the more these are going to come forward. And the more light I put on them, the brighter they're going to be. So for like this one here, I can have some light on this side and then go down to the darker as I get over here. And you see how that shows you where the light is as well. Now on some of these guys down here, I'm just going to put in some of the dark. I'm not really going to put in much light. This guy here, I can have some light on this side and then go down to the dark on this side. And you see how that everything you're doing is showing the way your light is coming through. This guy here, I'm going to keep him pretty dark and not really do much with him. Now one of the other things that I like to sometimes do when I'm doing that is I like to tip into a little bit of burnt sienna and just dip that around the side too, because that just adds a bit of an extra shadow to the inside, and I really like how that looks, just having that little extra shadow in there just kind of adds to the flower. And all of this is just stuff that you play with and learn as you go. Now because we're painting in a representational or impressionist sort of style, you don't have to just move that up a little bit. You don't have to strictly define your flowers and make them look exactly like flowers. Like as long as you have one or two that look, you know, very flowery, people are going to get that they're flowers, right? Like it's not. I'm going to put some nice light blue on some of these. It's not like you have to have them defined with realism, and that's one thing that I like about the impressionist style, is that you don't have to have all this strict realism in the flowers. It can be a little bit more light and airy and just kind of fun. I've got a little bit of burnt sienna in that. That actually looks quite nice. It's one of those little happy accidents that happens sometimes. You see, I wanted to just brighten up this blue a little bit and kind of make those more of a blue flower. And then I'm going to keep this side a little bit darker. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do some leaves. So, well, first of all, actually I'm going to take some pine green and some burnt sienna, put those two together. That makes a nice dark color. And I'm going to take it on my brush, just on the chisel. Just on the chisel edge of my brush. And I'm going to put in some, sorry, we'll get rid of that fly. I'm going to put in some stems. So my rose is coming down here, so I'm going to I've kind of got these in the way of the stems too, but I'm going to kind of just put in some stems. We'll put in a few different stems going through. I kind of like to have them come up through here and everything. We can kind of have a little bit down this side too because of those. I'm going to take the stems of these and really kind of just bring them down to the rose like that. And I'm going to maybe have some movement up here. It doesn't have to be specific, like I said, it can just be movement. And that'll kind of add to the whole visual of the whole thing. So then I want to make a really nice, because like I say, I've got I have to bring that rose up a bit. So one thing that I'm going to do is in my shadow areas, I'm going to take the green and I'm going to add a little bit of violet to it, make a really nice dark color. And then I'm going to come in here where the shadow is and I'm going to do a little negative painting. Now negative painting is where you paint the area you don't paint it's not where you paint the petals, it's where you paint the area behind the petals. So here I'm going to just like kind of come out like this and put that in there and bring it out a little bit. And I'm going to bring some of that down here as well, just kind of a bit of a shadow under the rose. Kind of like doing that sometimes. I'm going to take that green and I'm going to make a real nice, I'm going to dip into a little extender for this because it just kind of makes them slide a little nicer. I'm going to make a petal over here, a leaf over here, let it kind of sit for a little bit, and then just take the edge off of that on that one side. I think I'm going to do another, I'm going to do a leaf here. Kind of coming off of this piece here. Just do another little doohickey there. That's where I have a little stem. And then as I go around over to this side, I'm going to actually brighten it up. And you want to change your greens a lot. That's one thing that I've learned through studying, is that you want to change your greens so that you have lots of different colors in there. You don't want, if you look at a rose, the leaves are never all kind of the same color. And I'm going to take, oops, well, we had a dirty finger on that one, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go over that again. I'm going to take that edge off. Happy accidents, right guys? Happy accidents. Make sure my finger's relatively clean. Now I want to have even more of that hansa in there because the hansa is really a vibrant color and that's going to brighten this up a lot over here. And I want to definitely use those brighter colors on this side. Sometimes I'll just put in some movements of them as well. It doesn't have to be an actual leaf. You can do just like the movements of the color. I'd like to take a little bit of this really bright green and just kind of do a little bit around this rose here and this blossom. Just a little bit of negative painting just to kind of pop that off of there. You see how now that rose is coming up a little bit more, so you can actually kind of see it better. And I'm going to take kind of something in between those two, mix them together, and kind of do the same thing back here. I don't want to do too much because I want to have it, I do want to have it kind of disappear a bit back there. And the more you define it, the more it's not going to disappear on you. But add a little bit to there. You throw a little bit of that color in down here. Just kind of give it a little bit of that nice spring feel. Now I do feel like I want to take a little bit more shadow and add it in here on this leaf here. And maybe a little bit down in here as well. Just gonna have some of that shadow in there. I can also take some of that dark and I can use it to make a stem line on some of these. And I can take some of the lighter color and use it for a stem line down here. Oops. I can get some of it. It's still a little wet down there, that's why it's not working quite the way I was hoping. And you see I've kind of just got these guys here disappearing behind the leaves and not too worried about them. This little guy over here just kind of disappears. And so now I still feel like I need to bring up the lightness of that rose a little bit because I feel like it's getting lost in the background and my rose is supposed to be my queen, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some pink again and I'm going to lighten it up quite a bit here. Lighten that up quite a lot. And a clean spot on my paper towel. So I'm going to take some of that light there. And I'm going to really lighten up this outer edge. Of the rose. I just want to really lighten that up a bit. And like even here, I'm gonna lighten that up a bit. I'm gonna try and keep some of the dark there, but I'm gonna also lighten it up a bit. Because I think that will make that pop a little bit better. And here I'm gonna kind of bring that petal up over top above that flower there again. Kind of brighten this up a little because I need this rose to come up. A little bit of the light back here. Just kind of, and sometimes I'll paint in like that, and then I will go back and I will paint it back out with this. So like I painted it in there, and now I'm going to come back with some purple and kind of paint that back out again, because I want to keep that deep center, right? And I want to make sure that I keep my shadows over here. So even if I have to, you know, kind of come back in with them, and even here, come back in with a little bit of shadow, just add that in there, just adds a little interest. Now I'm going to actually go quite light for the front of the rose. So I'm going to take it over here, and now I'm taking this up to about a 9 there. And I want to come in here and really brighten up the front of this rose. Because I'm finding that it's kind of needs some of that extra light on it. I'm going to just brighten up the tip of that petal there. Brighten up this one a little bit. You don't want to mess with it too much because you want to keep it looking casual, but at the same time you need to make sure that your lights are light enough that they'll show up against that background, especially since I made the background quite warm in this case. So here on the light side, I'm actually going to lighten this up even more, just especially over on this really area where the light is really coming in. I want to have that lighter. And one thing that I do want to do is I want to make sure that I have a bit of a dark in here, just so that that petal there stands out. You see what I mean? So then I'm going to take this and really dip in there, just kind of bring that up. So this petal here is definitely on top of that one. And this one back here is definitely behind, right? You see how I'm doing that? And then here I want to make sure I do this again, bring this petal up. Now if I want the shadow to come out, I kind of push out on it. If I want it to come in, I pull in. But I want to make sure that I keep those lines in there. Now I do want to also come in here, make sure that this one here comes up above that one. I want to make sure that I keep this one on top. I'm going to go back in and add a little bit of this blue in here again, just into that shadow area. See, now I don't really like how that turned out, so I'm going to actually go in with the shadow again. Kind of take that out, and then I'm going to clean my brush and specifically go into my blue here, my nice light blue, and just kind of throw a little bit of that back in there. So now that I've painted that blue into there, I want to actually come back again with my really light pink and just kind of make sure that this petal is sitting up on top of that. want to make sure that this one here stays behind that. So I'm going to just add that little bit of shadow to it to make sure it stays behind. Another way to do that again is to get my light pink on the brush, tip into the white, and really make sure that I didn't quite work the way I wanted it to because I caught some red on there. But make sure that that petal is really coming forward as opposed to, and over here I'm going to add a little bit more of the violet. Kind of have a violet petal in there just to kind of add to that look. And you see now that rose, because I added all that light, that rose is popping off a lot more. So I think I'm going to call that good, and we will sign that, and yeah, let it be a little rose with some violets. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments or questions, please post them down below. Let me know what your favorite color of rose to paint is, because I'd be really curious. My favorite is actually yellow. That's actually my favorite rose color as well for when I grow them. I grow quite a few roses out in my yard. Although I have found it's very hard to find a hardy yellow rose that will survive our Canadian winters, but I love painting them. So let me know what color of rose you like to paint down in the comments, and be sure to check out my yellow rose tutorial as well. I'll have a link here at the end of the video. Have a great day.